You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 13 of the podcast. Today I'm going to be sharing a conversation I had with my good friend Tim. Tim and I have known each other in program for about 10 years, and prior to that, unbeknownst to either of us, we were both part of the metal community here in the Bay Area, roughly in the same years. We went to a lot of the same metal shows in our high school years, and once we met in program, we discovered that and helped me really bond with him. So if you've listened to the podcast, you may remember Tim from previous episodes. Tim and I bounced ideas off each other for coming up with the idea for the podcast. So among our different ideas were to do one-on-one interviews with people. Originally, we were going to do that in his garage. We thought it would be, really nice to capture what it's like to be in an SAA meeting, but also what it's like to be in fellowship afterwards, where we just hang out and talk casually. And originally, the idea for the podcast was to call it the meeting after the meeting. But we finally settled on the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. And our conversation today is a just complete conversation between two sex addicts. Sort of a meeting after the meeting vibe. I used to go hiking with a lot of my program friends here in the South Bay. And on our hiking excursions, we'd be gone for a couple of hours. And usually the first half an hour or so was just kind of casual conversation, what we're watching on TV, movies, music, things like that. And then as the conversation and the hiking got further and further, the conversations got deeper and deeper. And true to that nature, this conversation is pretty much the same. We both started talking about getting vaccinated. And I had mentioned right up front that I had got my second dose of the vaccine on Tuesday when we recorded. Got the shot at Levi's Stadium, which is where the 49ers play. It's a couple miles away from where I work. So the energy was a little bit low. But after 3 or 4 minutes, the conversation starts to head a little bit more towards program-oriented things. So anyway, I decided to leave in that intro part where we were just catching up with each other about getting vaccinated. We ended up talking about a lot of different things, including the difference between isolation and solitude. We talked about sponsorship, fellowship, what it's like at the retreat. What else? We also talked about working in a step group, working on step 4 in particular, where we're covering resentments and anger issues. And we ventured off onto some topics that were particular to what we're currently going through, issues that we have with society as a whole, and things that are going on within the Fellowship of SAA, including inclusion and diversity. Some of the things that we covered, they are our personal opinions, and I wanted to mention Tradition 10, something that we heavily researched before starting the podcast, bringing in outside issues and, kind of what things that we felt that it was okay to talk about on the podcast. And this is not the opinion of intergroup or the ISO. They are our own personal reflections on various topics, but we are seeing some of the problems of inclusion and diversity showing up in the rest of the fellowship. So those types of things fall under what we deemed okay for talking about on the podcast. And I will read a little bit from the Green Book about Tradition 10. So Tradition 10 is Sex Addicts Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the SAA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. At the bottom of page 93 in the Green Book, it says, the 10th tradition does not mean that as individuals we can't have or express opinions on outside issues. Our right to think and believe as we choose is absolute. However, we take care when making any pronouncements on outside issues within the SAA meeting itself, even if we have well-informed professional opinions or strongly held personal beliefs. In the same way that opinions on outside issues could damage our reputation when given publicly, such opinions expressed within meetings could drive away other members or cause dissension within the group. Our experience has shown that it is best to keep these opinions to a minimum when sharing, and to always identify them as personal opinions rather than the opinion of the group. In this way, we keep our focus on the experience, strength, and hope that the program offers to us all. So using that as our guide, we didn't call out specific political parties, affiliations, or movements or anything like that, but things that are leading to resentments in our personal lives, things that are leading to problems within our fellowship that the ISO has recognized and has set up subcommittees to help out with. So, just a heads up on that. We realize that, I think Tim made reference to something that, we can edit this out if we need to, but I deem that it falls within the guidelines that these are our personal opinions and we're not endorsing or opposing anyone else's beliefs. So I wanted to put that up front. We ended the conversation talking about acceptance, and our last discussion, we talked about acceptance as well. And there is a very well-known paragraph within the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on acceptance. In my edition of the Big Book, it comes from a story called Dr. Alcoholic Addict on page 449. Yeah, when my sponsor first gave me this reading, I wasn't quite sure why he gave me this reading because I don't identify as an alcoholic, nor do I identify as a drug addict as the story is written about. But he told me to go ahead and read it, and now I understand why. In further editions of the AA Big Book, I believe it's on page 417, and the story has been retitled, Acceptance Was the Answer. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I can accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world, as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. And that hits the nail on the head for what's going on with me and some of the things that I was talking about in terms of things on social media that were driving me nuts. And putting me into a bad headspace. Learning that I cannot change other people, that I need to look at what's inside myself that is causing me to react that way. Those are the things that I need to concentrate on. We also talked about activism and the kind of the difference between being angry and taking up in part of a movement. We covered a lot of stuff in this conversation, so without further ado, enjoy two recovering sex addicts having a conversation on a Tuesday evening.
How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
So, got my...
What is that? Is that a vaccinated? You got a card.
Yeah, it's a little pin.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, well, how did you score that?
By getting a second shot today.
I got a second shot and they just kicked me out. They didn't, they were like, you have to leave our establishment, sir.
I went to Levi.
Oh, okay.
They got all the money. They have like signs and all sorts of shit.
And door prizes, apparently.
Yeah. So I may be a little bit, not necessarily loopy, but kind of withdrawn. Chris noticed tonight that at dinner I seemed kind of.
What time did you get it?
At lunchtime.
Okay. Yeah. So, did you do the Pfizer, Moderna?
Pfizer.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris does her second shot of Moderna tomorrow.
Yeah, I keep so we had our second shot of Pfizer on Saturday, and like it was fine. Like I was tired a little bit, but it didn't it wasn't bad. Definitely have the horror stories though from mostly I feel like people who got the Moderna one. But I like to think since I'm practically senior age now, the older folks don't get hurt as much or have as many side effects. So
yeah. For me, it was just a crapshoot. I got an appointment over at Levi, so it was like whatever they had.
Yeah,
I just want to get jabbed.
Yeah, no, I was the same way. It's funny. I think too, when you are anticipating maybe getting sick, it's a strange thing because at least for me, like every sensation that I would feel, I'd be wondering, am I getting sick? Or it's like I was being tired, but as the parent, like we've been tired since 2008, 2009. Right? I don't know if that's a symptom for me. I'm always fucking tired.
Yeah. Tonight, we're cooking dinner and the window's open, the breeze is coming through, and it's like, is it cold or am I getting the chills?
Yeah, like, that's the thing. It's gonna make you.
It's cold.
Yeah, you're gonna get paranoid from it.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's the way to go. It feels good to have it done.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that we can get back to meetings soon. So
I'm wondering how that's going to go. We have such a strong Zoom thing happening.
Yeah.
The community.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, at least for one of the noon meetings, just saying, hey, I've reached my, after I get the 2 weeks, after the second shot today, saying that, I'm good. If anyone wants to join me over at the church, I'll be there.
Yeah, because I think we agreed to pay rent there, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, technically, if they're okay with it. Yeah, I think, I'm guessing it'll be a start slowly, see what happens type of a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll run two things, concurrently. Maybe the people want to show up live and
Yeah, it looks like, because in the at least like the Monday meeting is up to like 60 people.
That's insane. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know. That's
yeah.
insane.
So, if we have half of that as Bay Area people, the other half, I think it may be, 1/4 of that meeting is Bay Area people and 3/4 non-Bay Area.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we today, I as soon as my shot got done, um I did it on my lunch hour, so I completely missed the noon meeting. But
Mm,
we do the meeting after the meeting, and I hopped on for that, and um had a few new people there, and at least one from the UK.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so we've expanded.
How long do you guys hang out for the meeting after the meeting? How long does
I
that?
I have been on one that I had to call it quits at an hour and a half
Oh,
after the meeting.
jeez.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So normally the meetings from 12 to 1, and then my break time is usually at 2 o'clock, and so I'm just like, shit, we're still chatting, and got my break time, and then a work meeting like right after that, and I'm just like, guys, I gotta bail.
It's so, I mean, you and I have talked about this, and it was one of the principal reasons for our driving force, I think, with the podcast is so much good happens in those meetings after the
Mm-hmm.
meetings. So many, I've had so many realizations and bonding moments and just getting to know people further after like the structure of the meeting after that's done. It's really neat. It's really a phenomenon, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just we can talk about it a little bit later, but
Yeah, sure.
just last night, the step study group,
Mhm.
some of the meetings, we've been working on the fourth step, and over the past couple of weeks, it's been pretty fucking heavy.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
going through
Yeah. Agreed.
the resentments, fears, the sexual inventory, going through that as people were describing their stuff just throughout the hour and a half that we're on there. I'm just like, uh, uh, and
Yeah.
just I could feel the weight of it, and I'm grateful that you guys scheduled doing character assets for this
Yeah.
week, and just the jovial nature that at least our breakout room, we were telling the bad dad jokes,
Dad jokes. Yeah.
but as soon as the the meeting ended, we still hung on for another 10-15 minutes, and just the jovial nature was still there, and just being able to fuck around with everyone, and it
Yeah.
was nice to have that camaraderie. And I think you had mentioned at whether it was in the breakout room or afterwards, talking about um the the type of conversations that we have at the retreat and stuff, or we're able just to sit down and really get to know each other outside of a 3-minute share. So having those conversations is key.
Yeah. And I think when I first came into the program, first of all, I was freaked out, by going to something called Sex Addicts Anonymous. That felt like little not like I necessarily want to advertise that or
Mhm.
see or hang out or really get to know people before I really did get to know people, before I did get experience or so I kind of wanted to, I guess what I'm saying is show up and leave,
Yeah.
as soon as I could show up and leave, which I think is normal in the beginning. But yeah, so much of that was transformed in the meeting, after the meeting, and that retreat. The retreat was a leap of faith, because the idea of going off to spend the weekend with that group of sex addicts, it just doesn't look good on paper.
Yeah.
And it was open to all genders.
Yeah.
And so there was just so much, I was worried about that. And it was so much of those fears were unfounded.
Yeah. My wife and I were talking over the weekend about how, at least at our retreats, we have the women have their own cabin over here, and the men are over here. And then I was thinking about it, that over half, or around half, of the men are gay, and so you're just men living in the same quarters as men. But everything everything is just so healthy. Sometimes it can be a bit intimidating. I remember in the past needing to escape the groups and just find some solitary time, because sometimes it gets overwhelming, or where I get to a point where it's like I don't really know who to talk to and what to talk about, and so I'm gonna go put on my headphones and listen to music or something like that.
When I started, I had the exact opposite thing, not so much in talking to people, but doing every single workshop and activity. To be like a good spiritual person meant that I had to, and if there was something offered, I needed to be there. And after the years of kind of doing it, I've actually cut it in half. I go to about half the workshops, and then I spend some of that time in a healthy solitude. We talk about solitude versus isolation. And both of those words, mean very different things for the same action. It's a different attitude. And so having healthy solitude was something that it took me some years to develop.
I remember when we were still at the Santa Cruz site. I just remember there was a session where none of the workshops really appealed to me, and okay, instead of forcing myself to go to one that I don't want to, I can go hiking on that mountain right back there.
Exactly.
Have some personal time. And for part of it, I grabbed my camera and took some photos, but eventually find some other people that are kind of in that same mindset, and then just having a small pod of people having an intimate conversation. It's was really awesome.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah, that's the best part. Do you find is it hard for you was it ever hard for you to be by yourself? Was that ever unhealthy for you, be like prior to the program? Was that something you developed, or what was your relationship
in my addiction?
Well, just your relationship to hanging out with yourself. How do you do that in a healthy way?
I remember be it going all the way back to junior high, probably, through high school and college and beyond, that when I would have time to myself, it's going to go one of two ways for me. It's picking up the guitar and playing. It's like no one else is around. I don't give a fuck, and I'm just gonna jam and have fun. Or I'm gonna pick up a magazine, a video, in later years look at the drowning suck hole that is the internet.
Oh.
And so there was, I can remember in probably 6th or 7th grade when my mom would go out take my sister out shopping, and I would be by myself at home, and it was that internal debate: which way am I going to go with this? And it was about 50-50, whether I'd do something healthy for myself or take the other route, which was not healthy. How about yourself?
Right. Oh, for me, like kind of like going back to those years, I'm your stereotypical Generation X. I was a latchkey kid.
Yeah, me
My
too.
parents were divorced, and my mom worked swing shift, so I came home and let myself in after school, from kind of elementary school on up, and junk food and television were my companions. Those are my friends. It would start with Woody Woodpecker at 3:00 and end with like Three's Company and MASH at
It was
7.
funny. I was just going to bring up Scooby-Doo and Three's Company.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's what it was for me. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can play that game. Yeah, we all day. We would do that, and whatever our local. God, what were those? It was the Dialing for Dollars guy, but it was like
Pat McCormick, and
they would do
the horse and the bulldog.
Yeah, you've
the
heard
horse
of me.
Had that yacht rock.
Yes, the
Captain and Tennille type of hat.
Yeah, they would do little moral lessons and stuff like that, and there was like little game shows I remember, and all of that stuff. We had a second freezer and my mom stocked it. She went to a day old bakery and got like ho-hos, ding dongs. Basically, the more unhealthy, the better. And so I'm not sure how I avoided the diabetes, but that was, I didn't do team sports. I didn't do really, like I had a friend from the 4th grade and he moved away by the 6th grade. So yeah, a lot of solitary time, not necessarily by choice and not necessarily really knowing it, not really knowing what I was missing. It's not like I was looking out the window going, I wish I was on a soccer team. It just, it's probably more than anything, I passed that time with fantasy. I just fantasize about a lot of science fiction stuff and a lot of things that were, when I look back on it now, was giving power to the powerless. Imagining myself as a powerful figure in a fantasy situation, which actually morphed into my love of like heavy metal music and stuff like that. Because those lyrically, I'd get picked on all day at school, but the imagery and the lyrics of metal music that gave me an escape of believing I was that person. That's what metal and punk rock and stuff like that. Punk rock, I guess, came later for me, but that's what that it kind of gave me something to hold on to for that. And then and definitely puberty and sex addiction followed that. My stuff, I found things accidentally. I put accidentally in air quotes, but I find like Playboy magazines and stuff in under my brother's sink in his bathroom. He had the coveted bedroom downstairs with a separate bathroom. But those magazines he stole from my father. Like I would steal it from him. He stole it from my father. And it was just like we had this like lineage of secrets that nobody talked about. I guess it's obvious, make some secrets, but it's like we were just stealing porn from each other, and not. Obviously it wouldn't come up at the dinner table. It would just kind of be understood. You learned it by not talking about it. You learned it by not talking about it. So I think, it took me, I think, and continues to take me, time and, relationships with other people to learn how to be in solitude versus isolation.
Yeah.
Which is that being healthy and being okay. And it's really interesting now, I have 2 kids, married. It's still crazy COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't really felt like there's an opportunity for either, isolation or solitude. It's such a different time.
Yeah. I look at it and with streaming video, Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus and stuff, that I've got shows that I watch with my son. I got shows that I watch with my wife, and I have shows that interest neither. And so when and it's usually at nighttime, after my son's asleep and my wife is, reading or something, I'm left on my own. So, trying to find a healthy behavior. Sometimes, like I'll turn to guitar, but, for the most part, I'll pop on the TV. And I've mentioned, I think on the last podcast episode that I'm a huge Lost fan, and I've been doing a rewatch of the series. I've rewatched the entire series 7 or 8 times. And so, my wife has seen it, but she doesn't want to rewatch it. My son got into it, so that was cool. But that was kind of a solitary thing. And it's like when no one else wants to watch anything, I'll pop on, one of the DVDs and watch a couple episodes of that. And so I have, better behaviors that, things that I can do on my own. The problem that I find is that being in that mind frame for too long a period of time, that I will want to have my alone time.
Yeah.
This is my time to watch Lost. This is my time to watch this. This is my guitar time. And so when my family wants to do something, it's like, fuck, I wanted my alone time. And so what starts to happen is I start to go from that solitude of, occupying my time by myself to isolating and, just wanting to separate myself from the rest of the family so I can do self-centered things. And whether they're good or bad, but it's just that mindset, and that brings me away from a closeness, with my wife, a closeness with my son. And so that's not a good thing. And so going through the steps and with the step group that I mentioned, re-looking at my circles, there are things that I put into there that when I've been I usually use a month as a marker. It usually doesn't get that bad, but if it's been a month since I've had any physical, emotional closeness with my wife, that that's a bad thing for me.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, getting back, what I relate to and what you're saying is anytime that I have a better idea of what could be happening than versus what is happening, like coveting anything really, like this is my me time. Anytime I'm kind of having a conversation with somebody who's not there, a conversation in my head about the way that things ought to be. And I find as an addict, one of my coping mechanisms for that is I'm sure as hell going to take that time in the future. Like, oh, okay, I'm getting interrupted now. Like I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to watch this. I wanted to do this. I wanted things to be different, but duty calls, and I need to, there's something I need to handle. It's almost like a mini, it's hard to even call it a resentment, because a resentment, at least I'm conscious of it. It's almost subconscious, but it is kind of like a little resentment, like a little, and I kind of, those get collected in the background. And eventually that becomes a pattern for me that can do dangerous things to my sobriety, because you get enough of that in that bucket.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, damn it, then justification happens. And I need to take something for me. I've sacrificed. I'm not really convinced that I'm in, that I get to call all the shots in my life. And what I mean by that is, obviously we live in Silicon Valley. We have schedules, we have duties, we have responsibilities, and all of that. But I can confuse that easily with control and being able to predict how things are supposed to go. And then when life happens and I disagree with it's not fitting into that schedule that I had expectations of, then that's when those little resentments, I think, form.
Yeah, I was just thinking about shows that I want to watch. My son and I, we've been watching the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and having a blast watching that. But I wanted to binge watch a show. So Friday night happens. I'm getting ready to settle down and watch my thing. Hey, let's watch Falcon and Winter Soldier. Okay, we'll put that on. And then I want to watch this. And it's like, okay, we'll put that on. And then by the time he goes to bed, and it's like, I still want to watch my show. Yeah. And I will stay up way too fucking late.
Yeah.
Which
exactly. Yeah.
Which drives me into being tired, and that tired leads to crankiness. Crankiness leads to resentments. Resentments lead to justifications, and so that can be a bad space for me as well.
Yeah, I like what it says. I mean, it's pretty plain in the AA program that we can't afford to have these resentments.
Yeah,
that always stood out to me, because it was less judgy. Like, it wasn't like thou shalt not have resentments, or you're a bad person if you have resentments. It's we can't afford to have them, meaning suggesting that there is a choice at some point. Like I can choose to pick it up or choose to put it down for the benefit of my sobriety.
Yeah, when I first did the fourth step and looking at resentments, I'm not a resentful person where, I don't harbor a lot of resentments long term. There are, definite things that I have carried long-term resentments, organized religion for one. But, with people, I don't really carry a lot of long-term type of stuff. But it's the short-term stuff, the guy that just fucking cut me off. That person.
Sorry about that.
The person, here doing that, these little micro resentments that build up. And what I've loved about working the fourth step is being able to carry that all the way through and find out what character defects are driving me to see that resentment, and carrying that through the rest of the steps of learning to let that character defect go and have my higher power come in and help with that.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I've been working on with my sponsor is emotional sobriety. And we talked about that in the STEP workshop a little bit a week or two ago. Also says, I think it's in the AA 12 or 12. It's how emotions can be like drinking to the alcoholic, and how, for me, what I've come to see in my program is it's not so much about not getting angry I'm not a perfect person. So it's not about not being angry at the person who drives like shit and cuts me off. I can be angry. It's when the anger develops into a story, I hold on to it. It becomes, they should drive like this, I should be like that.
Yeah.
When it gets into more and more, gets deeper and deeper, and I get caught up in that, I get really, I can get hung over, just like I've been under the influence of something else.
Yeah.
And, so it's not about I find that if there's just a way for me to feel the feelings in the moment and let go, versus even, trying to develop a program where I don't feel feelings or whatnot, or protect myself from them. If I just genuinely feel it and accept it in the moment, it seems to pass on its own. It's when I hold on to them that it gets bad.
Yeah. When you had just mentioned, kind of the story that builds up and the controlling of what another person should be like, according to King Me, that that's where I get into. I had mentioned, last week, right before I talked to Bill, that this is a divided nation currently, and so many people. I have a lot of stuff in common with the hundreds or thousands of Facebook friends that I have. We have a commonality, but there are also opinions that are so vastly different from what I believe in, and I will start to get hung up on that. And it's like, how are you not seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, you fucking idiot? And my wife terms it, when I start to go clackety clack, when she can hear the keyboard going. Like, are you clackety clacking? And it's like, when I have to catch myself, is that has become a bad thing for me. And so I was doing that like an hour prior to me getting on to Zoom with Bill. And so my headspace was just messed up. I am still like feeling the residual stuff. But talking with him that evening it put things back into perspective, and I felt calm, and it didn't go back to that night. So when I'm able to recognize now, when I start to go down that path, sometimes I will still go full steam and clackety clack away, and other times I start typing stuff and hit the backspace and scroll on and just find some other thing, or shut off the browser, do something healthy. But having that resentment, having the emotions that follow that is not a good space for me to be in.
I have I have a whole rabbit hole about what you just said about that, because I think that people, myself included, can truly confuse being agitated with protesting. You can confuse arguing and having the quote unquote right opinion as that's the same thing as change. That's the same thing as active. And it's not. it's not for me anyway. I've learned that going and getting into that agitation with other people who I'm not an expert, but I don't think anybody goes on the internet to get their mind changed. I don't think that they're like, hey, maybe somebody somewhere is going to say something. And you know what, that's going to change my opinion. It's not a venue for that. It's not a venue for an open mind. And it's not a place to go. Like, you can't, what do they say in the program, going to the hardware store for bread? It's not church. You're not going to find a spiritual answer on Facebook arguing with somebody on that. It's never going to lead there. And I had to come to a place where it was just okay for me not to play that game anymore. I know that there's lots of people who pride themselves on saying, I've got friends who cross every political spectrum and they believe this and that, and I can be friends. I can't. I'm not gonna. I don't have to. That's not where serenity is for me. Okay. It's not a contest. It's not I'm not going to achieve it by doing battle with those who agitate me. I can choose to set up a structure for me to be successful when it comes to serenity, and doing that, I have to have that structure. And just touching on the emotional things and how to handle emotions in a healthy way. For me, the best, we both have young kids, and they are the best examples to me of how to handle emotions in a healthy way and not hold on to stuff. Go through them. In fact, so much so that we have to condition them to not do it too much. I have a 5-year-old boy, so he'll show his feelings but he moves on. He's not holding on to anything. And it's, to me, it's amazing to have that little teacher. He's like a little Buddha. And if the Buddha was insane and wanted chocolate all the time, then he's alive and well in my house.
Yeah. When you're talking about our kids, your daughter and my son are about pretty close to the same age. And, that one of the things that I've been trying to do differently than my parents and generations is talk about anger, talk about emotions and stuff. I mean, we got into it the other day, and he's like, he was really upset about something, and you don't let me be angry. I was like, I let you be angry. It's just whether in this moment, you can be as angry as you want to be, but do you want to stay that way? If you want to live your life an angry, pissed off person, go ahead. It's not going to lead to many good things. But if you learn to be angry, figure it out what it is that's bothering you and try to let that go. Give him some different tools. And it's hard, really hard to do, hey, do your step work and you'll be fine.
But have them write out.
I try to carry the things that I've learned in this program and try to, taper it down to, a healthy behavior that a child can pick up instead of ignoring and stuffing down those feelings, stuffing down the anger, stuffing down the sadness. It's like, let it out. But we have healthy ways of doing that, and we have unhealthy ways of doing that. And I try to talk to him about things like that to make sure that, I'm, there for him, but, I don't want to be the doormat and just let him, just blah, 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 all the time. But, let him know that, I hear him. That's the hardest thing for me, especially when his anger elevates my anger.
Yeah.
I need to let him know that I hear him, as that's one of the things that as a teenager, I don't think I felt like I was not being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so things that I'm learning as a parent to kind of pass that on rather than to pass on the addictive behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that thing about modeling. If we want our kids to take care of themselves, we have to model how we take care of ourselves. And I do that too. I try to talk directly to my daughter. It doesn't always work. It's more of a lead by example thing, right? And I know just by being involved in a program that has this type of self-awareness is such head and shoulders above from where I came from, and I project where you would come from too, being raised. The big people who were raising me did not have these kinds of tools and just were not aware of any of the behavior. So the fact that we can give our kids respectful boundaries, to treat them like people, and where my wife and I, the way we talk to each other, it's respectful. We have differences, but we don't have blowout, screaming matches.
Yeah.
And there's no holes in the walls from those conflicts. We have our differences and we talk it out, but that's a different thing than what I grew up with. And I think that's hopefully that's the best you can do, because I don't know that I can do better than that. But,
yeah. There was I want to stay on that topic, and then I also was wanting to jump back to the social change and stuff. One of the things, I'm dying to talk to a few other people in program around this, is diversity and inclusion. That we have the ISO has created committees around diversity and stuff around racial issues. I don't know if you read the Outer Circle from a few months ago. There was
I did not know.
There was a cover that was innocuous.
I heard about this.
From the editor's standpoint, but it was a black mask amid a bunch of white masks.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
And so it didn't dawn on them the racial implications of what that meant. So I've been working with the retreat committee, trying to see what we can do to make this fellowship more inclusive. But we do have subcommittees here in the Bay Area that are working on BIPOC issues, working on diversity issues, gender stuff. So I'm going to be reaching out to those communities and stuff, and I want them to have a voice here on the podcast. But just knowing that difference of that you had mentioned about the being angry about something and then standing up for something and fighting for it. So I think that is a very important thing, and a thing to distinguish, between the anger that comes from those types of things.
Yeah, and where that stemmed from, it also conflict, but also anger, like people. And this might be swinging wildly off topic, but I don't know. But, you can always edit going forward. But like I am opposed to child abuse. as would project many people are opposed to child abuse. And it makes me angry thinking about it. But being angry is not the same thing that's not changing child abuse.
Right.
Okay. Changing child abuse is changing child abuse, getting involved in an organization, going out and doing something. Simply being angry about it, that's not the same. That's not a revolution. If you're angry about a political party or somebody's point of view that you think should not be this way, being angry about it that's not change. Mm-hmm. That's not the same thing. But I think we feel like it really is. Like, good people get angry about awful things. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. But you're not being angry about it. That's not change. Don't confuse those two things. If you want to change something, you can change something, or you can work toward that. Mm-hmm. Like what you're talking about, right? With more inclusion and more, and for me, it's more of a campaign. A lot of damage gets done through ignorance and through kind of almost passive ignorance, right? If you look at the history of our country and all the advertisements, and the advertising that was done 50 years ago is appallingly racist and obviously racist by today's standards. If you ask anybody at that time, they would look at you like you're crazy. Mm-hmm. They're not, we focus a lot on the people who are carrying torches and screaming blatantly racist things from the tops of their cars. Yeah. That gets the attention. And those people are a problem, but they're not the problem. The problem is the passive ignorance. Yeah. That goes through the passive kind of like, oh, that's no big deal. Like the cover of what you're talking about. That's not a big deal. And that's the thing that through service, I think we can change some of that passive ignorance and make more and more people, because the addiction is a human problem. It's a human problem. And so the idea is that all humans should have a safe place to come to have community, because in our particular program, community is what makes the difference.
Yeah. And one of the things, my wife and I got into a discussion about is, sure, you have a diverse population in your, recovery community, but is it welcoming for everyone? And, it's like some of the stuff I had to step back, and it's like, oh, I think it is, but I don't know. I need to do some self-examination on that. And just giving people the opportunity to run a workshop, to one of the things that we were talking about was, with the retreat committee, does everyone know about how to become part of the retreat committee? So when we're asking people to be speakers, when we're asking people to submit workshops, when we're organizing the talent show, when we're doing all these sort of things, does that message go out to our meetings that anyone here can join the retreat committee and help out? And if what I talked about, and this ties into what you were saying, is for years the retreat committee was a San Francisco based.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. So the Bay Area is really wide. We have a couple major cities around the Bay, and as even farther. So we've got North Bay, like Santa Rosa. We've got East Bay with Oakland and Berkeley. We've got San Francisco, and down in the South Bay we got San Jose and Silicon Valley, and even out to Sacramento. And we had one group of people from San Francisco that were organizing the retreat and pulling all their friends in to be speakers, all their friends to be workshop presenters. And so I, wanted the South Bay to have representation. And, why aren't we grabbing the people from our meetings to be speakers, since we have some amazing people, the workshop presenters as well. And so I tried to get more and more people from the South Bay involved with the retreat committee. And then, making sure that we have people from the East Bay and from the North Bay to be part of the retreat committee. And so we had regional representation. But, what happens is, still a lot of that ends up being a bunch of old white guys. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
in recent years, we've been talking about gender diversity, sexual orientation diversity, racial diversity, and really wanting it to be inclusive, and getting that message out to all the meetings around the Bay Area. Getting messages out to the individual meetings can be a hassle. But in Zoom, a lot of us are jumping around to different types of meetings, different places. So I think the message spreads a little easier, but there are still pockets of meetings that aren't getting the same information. So I'm hoping that people will hear that the retreat committee and other committees want people intergroup just wanting people to be involved and to be of service. And the welcoming aspect is what the conversation that I had with my wife was real eye-opening for me. Are we being welcoming? I think we're welcoming at meetings, but when it comes to service work, are we being welcoming? So that's something that over the next year that I really want to work on.
Yeah. And attracting people to work, oftentimes it may seem like the responsibility of, service falls to one particular group, but that may be an enthusiastic group that's just been doing it. And people tend to if you do it, people tend to let you do it. And so just, part of it is attracting people into those roles. And time will also take care of that too, as a whole demographic makeup of our society as well. And also AA, I feel like they've always been somewhat aggressive about service in general versus I've been involved in other 12-step programs, and we have the same problem with sponsorship, right? Like there's a lot more sponsees than there are sponsors in our program. But yet everyone I talk to in AA, they're like, hey, Jason, this is your first meeting. This is Ted. He's going to sponsor you. Okay. It's like they're kind of like type A about it a bit. I don't know how comfortable, but it gets it done, right? It's kind of this, I'm not saying that that's better, but it just they don't seem to have that problem or issue filling service positions as much as other programs.
Yeah. I was thinking, with the whole sponsorship thing, one of the driving forces for doing step study groups like the one you guys are leading is it churns gets people through the steps and churns out people who are able to take on service, able to sponsor other people. And there are a couple other people, a couple of other step groups like that going on concurrently. And so I'm hoping that it's like, it took me a year and a half to do step one. Once I did step one and started on the steps, it still took a couple of years for me to get through all 12 steps, and to have a regimented thing that gets people through the steps and gets people to where they can start sponsoring others. And hopefully we can change the the percentage population of people who are willing to sponsor. So, and hopefully we can have what AA has is, a bunch of people looking for sponsees rather than sponsees looking for the few people who are able to sponsor.
Well, I think the idea too, I know for me, I've been hesitant about sponsorship in the past because I've often confused it with therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like what my responsibilities and what my role as a sponsor will be, was a lot closer to what a therapist is versus a sponsor, which is, it's not necessary. I have a experience, strength, and hope to share. That's what I can bring into the table. And an annoying repetition of like, what step are we working? Always bring it back to the steps. Back to the steps. But, getting into it, spending hours on the phone with somebody, talking, trying to solve their problems, that's not the role for me anyway. That's not the way that I sponsor.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I'm there to help someone through the steps.
Exactly.
Yeah. Get your circle set up and then start working on the steps. And when the message, starts to be diverted in a phone call and stuff, and it's like, like you mentioned, where does that fall into your step work? So what step are you on? If you can pour that problem into that step or steps previous, and that's what I love. Once we can get people beyond steps 4, 5, 6, and 7, you can, when other problems are happening, you can, okay, well, take that to step 4. If you're not solid on your spiritual foundation, go back to steps 2 and 3 and stuff. But I've had sponsees that will just ramble on and on and on about the problems and not working on their steps. And eventually I had to let them go because, I've given you a step assignment, and for the past year, you have neglected to do that. I'm not here to be your therapist.
Yeah. And I think that's something that probably, I think what happens is people hear the word sponsor and they might say either I'm not qualified to do that, or I don't have the time, or something. I mean, those were the things that would come up for me, or my reasons for saying no.
Yeah. Some of my sponsees have, when I told them that they're, definitely able to sponsor. And it's like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. The first couple time we sponsor people, I don't think any of us know that we're doing it right. And, this brings it back to the progress rather than perfection is, I have found the mistakes that I've made in sponsoring people just by doing it. It's like, I don't learn unless I do it.
Right.
And so I've found what works and what doesn't. But, if I don't already have that in my arsenal, I just need to experience it, be willing to fuck up, make a mistake, and try something different the next time.
Yeah, I do. I like the in AA, they say it's alcoholics helping alcoholics. For us, it's addicts helping addicts. It's not somebody from a superior position helping somebody in a lower position. That's not what it is. It's addicts helping addicts. It's people who are participating in this program. Typically someone who's done it a little bit longer, than the person being sponsored, but it doesn't have to be that much longer.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. I've sponsored people that have more sobriety than me.
Yeah.
And
I have to. Yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing to think about, but it's, it really doesn't matter.
I charge them less money though. It's a joke. It's sliding scale. No. But I mean, you're not just that not having to be a person who's responsible for somebody else's sobriety lifted the weight from me.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
I'm not responsible for the work somebody else does. I'm not, I'm just here. And, when I'm calling my sponsor, I'm not acting out. I'm just by virtue, that's already a positive. I've already got a checkbox in on the happy side of the column.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm talking to him, it's already, I'm doing all kinds of things that are more authentic than I am when I'm in my disease. So it doesn't take much.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, as we're about at an hour, we can still go on for a few more minutes, but I know you had mentioned prior to hopping on the call about talking about anxiety and stuff, and I don't know if you want to focus on that now or if we can do that on another thing, but you said you had mentioned that some stuff was coming up for you currently.
Yeah, the reason I said that was I forgot we chatted last week, and we're gonna we're doing the podcast this week, and I realized I can't do it because I have a bunch of stuff coming up. Like I'm going back to work this weekend for the first time since the pandemic. And that's an overnight thing. And in my mind, there's a lot to prepare for. But the word prepare can be easily switched with obsess in my mind. And I will confuse, or what I was starting to do is say, well, I can't do anything this week. I need to prepare for that. So I kind of did this podcast on purpose as a way of challenging that.
Ooh,
because
nice.
What I really wanted to do was quote unquote prepare, which means worry. One of my favorite spiritual sayings, I didn't make it up, is worry is not preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And I can confuse those two things and think that if I, what am I packing? How am I practicing enough? Am I prepared? Am I doing this? And it's kind of like, really, I'm not really doing much of anything except spinning in a larger and larger circle.
Mm-hmm.
I've got I have wood rot in my house. It started with we wanted to get our house painted. It's turned into we need a new roof, new
mm-hmm.
gutters. We have some wood damage. I don't know how far the damage goes, but it's all of a sudden that combined with the work that I'm doing this weekend is back, and life felt like too much. And the last thing that I could do is I don't have time to go on a podcast. I don't have time for this, right? I don't have time because I need to be anxious because
mm-hmm.
that's in my rigorous training, upbringing in the household that I do. That's what responsible people do. They worry about stuff and they fix it and they do. And the other thing is there's a big hangover from that, right? When the weekend's over, and this is in the past, it's I'm trying to get through this shit and get to that point. And so what I'm trying to recognize is that life is happening right now in the midst of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going on. It's still Tuesday. I still have other people I live with. I still, there's a lot of time between now and then. So what does it mean to, I guess, do it differently? How do I handle anxiety, anticipation, planning, worry? How do I handle that stuff in a healthy way versus feeding into it, letting it snowball, getting emotionally hungover, and then later on down the line, perhaps acting out as a way of coping with all of that anxiety. But that's it.
Yeah, just that.
That.
Yeah. The preparing and stuff. My son went back to face-to-face meetings school last week, and just the anxiety for us as parents was starting to creep up. I know your kid
Yeah.
Both of them that went back?
Yeah,
Or
both of them are back in. Yeah.
and just the few weeks before, all the mental preparation that goes
Exactly.
into that. Yeah, I tried not to focus on the worrying aspect of it, and just, it'll be fine. And when I started to get a little squirrely, do some prayers and, and meditation around it,
Mhm.
and stuff. But yeah, it's funny when you were talking about preparing. My son was, so nervous but so excited, and he started getting his backpack ready a couple days before, going back to
Enthusiasm. Yeah.
class. And so I could see him, just doing all that preparation. But it gets to a point where there's not, you just got to, let time happen. So,
Right.
not focus on all the, what if this, what if that, what if that. And so I'm hearing that in what you were talking about, getting ready to be at work, do your work for the first time in over a year.
Yeah.
Then just like all the what if this, what if that, what if that, and all of those things. So, and yeah, I recognize the that feeling is, I don't have time for this. uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what comes up is they have those 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, and action.
mhm.
And being, first of all, being aware of everything, all the story about it, being aware that all of that is happening right now. Like I am sitting here and I have stories about the future running through my head, and I have this, I'm aware of that. And really just kind of accepting, what does it look like to accept that without judgment, and to accept it, and just be okay. Like, I can hold all of it. I can
Mhm.
hold my future tripping, and my desire to be present, and my I wish I wasn't future tripping voice in the same place. It's all happening right now. That is what is present for me. So, I guess for me right now in the moment, that the work is around that second A, the acceptance, that's just the reality of it. Like, I can't control if I will be emotionally hungover, or if I can't really control if I'm gonna future trip or not, but I think I can accept that I'm a human being who's conditioned to do that type of thing. And then, you know, see, that's already different than trying to fight it.
Mhm.
you know Again, trying to fight something isn't necessarily the same thing as changing something. And so I have to just, yeah, acceptance. Another problem for me is I confuse acceptance with things being comfortable and looking a certain way, looking
Mhm.
successful. Like, I have accepted it, therefore it does not bother me, and and I love it. And that's not the way that I found that it works all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, awesome.
Yeah,
I'm,
man.
so grateful for you, reaching out. So, you had originally reached out last week, right when I was, getting prepared to jump on with Bill. And so it's like, yeah, we can, schedule this. The hardest thing that I have recently, in doing this is, I'll put the episode together, upload it, and then it's like, oh, I feel great. I listen back to it and then love it and get a lot of response, and it's like, oh, that's done. Oh shit, there's another one that I've gotta do.
Yeah.
And
Jeez.
and so, I'm trying to put these out, weekly. I think
Yeah.
it's reasonable, but sometimes it might be bi-weekly. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I feel like I've, finished, and then
Yeah.
it's like, nope, life keeps going. I've got to do something. So, I was grateful to have you, step up, and, we were trying to figure out what, if we were going to grab a couple other people for tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm grateful that, it worked out the way it did, because, this conversation was just kick ass for me.
Yeah. I don't know what we said, but
it'll be fun to listen.
I'm hoping, back. Yeah. I'm going to listen to it for the first time someday, but yeah, it's nice just to be, it's a benefit too of not having anything to hide, or not trying to be a different person. Mm-hmm. Or, for me, it was trying to fool people into seeing something that's not necessarily there, or trying to fix myself when I'm not really broken. It's a benefit just to be able to talk. And, okay, and that's okay. To be comfortable in that. So right back at you, kid.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, I thank you for joining me on the podcast this week, and look forward to seeing you in person at a meeting sometime soon.
Yeah, man. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. One of the things I wanted to mention that I looked up after our conversation, Tim and I, at the beginning, we were talking about being latchkey kids and watching After School, Woody Woodpecker, Scooby-Doo, Three's Company, MASH, things like that. And the station that we watched it on had a couple of puppet characters named Charlie and Humphrey. I had to look that one up. It was fun to find it on YouTube. I'll sneak it in there at the end of the episode. So instead of sharing a song from any of my God mixes here on this episode, I thought I'd share the fact that Tim actually wrote the bumper music that I use at the end of the conversation. When we were looking for theme music for the podcast, he had written this, and I, after discovering what I ended up using for the theme music, I decided to trim this down and use it as bumper music. So I'd like to share a little bit more of the full track that Tim worked on. And for the intro and outro music that I use, that comes from a band called Springtide. And the song is called Distant Thunder, Sunday Morning Again. And I found this at the freemusicarchive.org when I was looking for royalty-free music to use for the intro. And I ended up using just a small portion of the song, but I thought I would play a little bit more of towards the end of the song that has some vocals. And lastly, before closing out this episode, I wanted to mention that listening back to the conversation, I talked about my getting involved in the retreat committee. And I didn't want it to sound like I was ungrateful for the San Francisco Fellowship and what they were able to do with the retreat. It's just that I wanted to have better representation from different areas around the Bay Area. So I am eternally grateful for those that started the retreat and kept it going. Similar to the retreat is the annual ISO International Convention, which happens every Memorial Day weekend. Last year, it was supposed to be in Columbus, Ohio, and they delayed it for another year because of the COVID pandemic. And it was scheduled again to be in Columbus, and because of the slow roll of getting people vaccinated, the ISO decided to hold it on Zoom this year. I just registered, and I'm hoping to participate in the talent show there. So anyway, it is a private link that I cannot publicize here, but I'm sure if you contact the ISO, they would be happy to provide any information on where to register. But it's $25 for the weekend. I think by the time you are listening to this, registration may be up a little bit, maybe $35. But it should be a really awesome recovery weekend. And it's been a while since I've gotten any feedback via email, so I love hearing those. At meetings, I get a lot of questions about the program, about the steps, about being a sponsor, things like that. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to email us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. And just thinking of the domain name, hopefully we'll be having a website soon. Intergroup is doing our visioning meeting in May, where we discuss things that we would like to move forward in the next year. And the past couple of years I've been focusing on getting the actual podcast out and not so much on the counterpart website. So I will be bringing that up at Intergroup, and hopefully we can have an actual website with information there as well. But yeah, please feel free to email us. I'd love getting the feedback, and I'm happy to answer anything that I can. Like always, I thank you again for listening to this episode, and keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.
"1,001 Stupid Things to Do," a book by Humphrey Hambone. Well, he knows them all. Yeah. Hey, could that be Pat's favorite lamp, the family heirloom? Yeah, could be. I borrowed it. I never thought he'd loan it to a clumsy dog. His priceless antique lamp. Yeah, well, I didn't say that he lent it to me. I said that I borrowed it without asking. Yes. Worry Warden, anything happens to that lamp, boy, I'll tell you, you'll be in a peck of trouble since you didn't bother to ask to borrow it. Oh. Glue! I need glue! 1,002 stupid things to do. Borrowing without asking. You're gonna need lots of glue.